Welcome to episode number 30. Val made me say that. I'm sorry. It's true.
You liked it.
I liked it a little bit. Okay, what our topic today is power. If you guys missed last week's episode, it was on protection, and we don't ever shower, and we like to wear the same outfits. Just kidding. If you're listening to this, you're like, what is she talking about? But if you want to see it, you can go to Big Money Stylist. No, what is it?
You go to bigmoneystylistnow.com.
Yes. I also share it on my blog, too, which is dkwstyling.com. So either of those, you can see video, audio. You can see how my chin's not working this week. There's so many fun things going on. But today's topic is on power, and I'm going to let Ani introduce our topic.
Yeah, so we go over one topic every week, power, production, profit, protection. And inside of power this week, I feel like it's a topic that at one point in time, maybe even still to this day, not one of the three of us was ever good at. Like, I think we've all been pretty fucking garbage at this one topic. And that topic is vulnerability. Yee. Danielle.
It's so funny because Garrett is my husband, and he's
Wait,
like,
what?
He's like the more emotional one, like wants to talk about his feelings, and he'd always tell me I was like a plastic Barbie, and like I didn't want to share my feelings, and I was kind of a robot, and I was like, really? I was like, I don't think that of me at all. But then I guess I came across like maybe not that approachable. And then like just being married to him, and communication is huge for us. I've really learned to like open up more. And I've also been not afraid to like share my feelings and be vulnerable. And I know I talked about it on one of our other shows, how I came to realize like vulnerability is my superpower. And it's not necessarily like a weakness. And I think because I feel all these emotions, when I would shut it down, I would come across maybe inauthentic or like a stone cold killer. Not stone cold killer, but I just like seemed very like unapproachable. Mm-hmm. And when people would get to know me, I think I'm very approachable and I'm very nice. And so I over the years, I've just decided like, hey, there's a lot of power in being vulnerable and sharing your story. And I honestly believe that's how I built the brand of even MBR, Natural Beauty Rose, because I was vulnerable enough to get on and be like, I have the shittiest hair ever. You know what I mean? Right. And it started with just that small story. And then with our education, which is called Big Money Stylist, another level of vulnerability came where I was like, hey, we couldn't fucking pay the bills. We were losing everything. I was selling shit left and right to feed the family and didn't know if I wanted to stay married. And I started sharing my story of how like I had to like just go to work and like just the whole story. And and it was interesting because people would come and they would take the MBR, and I would always get, I know I've told you guys this a million times, but I'd get sad when they would have this technique and they weren't like killing it, and they weren't implementing it. And then I realized the painful place which I was at in kind of losing everything and not knowing if I was going to stay married was the reason that I was like, I have no choice, this will work. Mm-hmm. And then I noticed like sharing my story with students, it was another place of vulnerability where they could connect, and they were like, yes, I'm having pain in my life too. And I'm like, great. So everybody has pain in their life, and me sharing my story, and now I'm married up to here giving you a tool that can actually make you money. We've had like amazing results. And I always say that it's not just about the hair, but there's so much more to it. And I think that's why BMS is like blowing up, is because you can go take a hair class anywhere, but there's just a lot of other shit that goes on that makes or breaks somebody's success in life and in business.
So Val.
Yeah.
Ryan said something to you once that I can never remember verbatim, but he got you a cactus, I think it was. And he said
for Valentine's Day.
What did he say?
He said, it's a cactus. It's like you, prickly but low maintenance. And I thought that was the sweetest thing ever.
I will never forget it. And I always try to remember verbatim what he said. I just remember he compared you to a cactus, and I loved it. So vulnerability for you. I won't say it's your strongest suit.
I never have seen you be vulnerable. Like, you always seem so chill, but I can usually say, I think because I've known you like the longest out of everybody, and you're like the type that you just go quiet and like power through it, and I'm like, oh, she's gone to the dark place.
She's not talking
it's
again.
Dark Val, guys. So vulnerability for you, what? Because we've been sent to some gnarly shit this year.
I'm still working on it. I mean, I do it like on stage when I share, anytime like I bring up the kids, like that's probably where I get like the most vulnerable. What's the question?
Vulnerability, because we've been sent to some shit this year to work on us not being stoic and stone cold.
I I feel big for like people. Like I'm compassionate. I would always say that even when I was little, my mom would always be like, you never cry. And I'm like, I feel like how she's feeling, my sister, how she's a crying mess right now. I feel that same way. It's just not coming out in tears. So like it just doesn't manifest in me the same way that it does for everyone, but I still feel the same way. It just doesn't come out the same. So with being vulnerable, what made me do it the first time, like, well, one, Garrett just threw me on stage and was like, share your story. And I was like, oh, God, okay.
I'm not crying because I'm sad. I'm crying because I'm stressed.
And then it literally happened, like, on stage. It had never happened. And it was the first time that I wasn't crying because I was in front of people. I was crying because I was, like, realizing, holy shit, like, you went through a lot of stuff. And, like, you shoved it so deep that you, like, I didn't realize it until I was literally on stage at the first convention, and I was like, oh, fuck, that's really gnarly what you did. Like, and then all the feedback that I got from it, and then that's when, like, I felt like for the first time, like, my true, like, sense of, like, my purpose of what I wanted to do with BMS was, like, for everyone, yes, but so much for the moms, like, for having that balance in your life, for having a maternity leave, for if your kid gets sick with a surgery, that you can be in the hospital and not be behind the chair working on it. So the effect, like, it was something that I realized about myself in that moment that was, like, therapeutic to me, even though I was crying on stage. And then that I knew it was, like, having a trickle effect on others. And I was like, oh, now I see why people, like, open up so that they don't feel alone. And then I'm like, oh, other people feel that way too. And then I felt less alone, you know? So
isn't it interesting too? And I don't know if you guys experienced this, but, like, I remember the first time I, like, got not on stage, but even in amongst our small classes that we were doing, and I would just share little pieces of my story, and it was like an outer body experience where I was them listening to me, and that's what triggered the emotion. Like, I was a student listening to my story. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
totally.
And I was like, wow. And then just, like, hits you, and you're like, holy fuck, this, I went through a lot. This was hard shit. And so many people want to say, oh, it's not hard, and they don't see the place of pain until they're out of it, and they go back in it to experience their emotions, and you're like, fuck no, I'm not going back to that. And that's what creates, like, this, like, emotional, like, thing, and everybody in the audience can see it and feel it, and it just, it's like a cool experience. But and that's when you're like, it's like a high, right? It's like an emotional high where you finally feel yourself letting go and sharing your story, and then, like, you feel the love and the energy in the room, and it's like a whole nother level of a high. I don't even know how to describe it. And then it's like, what can I do with this high that I'm experiencing? And it makes you want to figure out, how can I share, and how can I do this more? How can I be more vulnerable? And it's a really cool place to be in.
Yeah.
Well, and I know with me, I'd always viewed, it's so funny because when the students would come to me, because they literally, like, they tell me everything, some of the most gnarliest shit I've ever heard in my life. Some days where I'm like, Jesus, I have to be able to, like, hear it, take it in, help, assist, push, coach, train, but I can't, like, actually take that home with me. And it's so crazy because when I would see our students go through and actually, like, talk about things that I'm like, I would never fucking talk about that, I'm like, God, they're so strong for being able to share that part of their story. But for me, when it would come to, like, sadness and vulnerability and tears, I can shut it down super fucking quick. And Garrett says it's not the best thing for me, but I know I can do that because I viewed it as weakness in myself, which is so fucked up. Because why? Like, why is it good for someone else but not good for me to do that? And I think, like, the first time, like, I really went through and was, like, truly vulnerable with the students was beginning of January when I ended my engagement. Like, I will never forget standing on the stage. So inside of Big Money Stylists, every single Wednesday, we do 2 hours of live training for all of our students. And we have our actual, like, recording studio. We have the cameras, the TVs, the stage. We have just fucking everything. And it was me, Garrett, and Val. And I don't know if you were there at the time, but yeah, it was us three. And Garrett, I just sat on the stage by myself. I stood there and I just told them, like, the entire story of what happened, which I think up until that time, I swear to God, Val, you might have been the only person that knew it. You and, like, my parents. Like, I don't know if anyone truly knew what, like, Garrett at that point knew too, but I wasn't super open to, like, here's my whole life story, guys. I was like, no. And so I'm sitting there in front of, it was what, like 100, 150 artists maybe 125. And I'm just telling them this entire story. And the whole time I'm doing it, I'm like, you've lost your fucking mind. I cannot believe you're sitting here sharing, like, a deep, like, super, like, painful part of your life with all these people who, when I think about it, I was like, they don't give a shit. Like, they have their own fucking problems. They don't care what's happening inside my life. Like, I'm not gonna, like, burden someone else with my feelings. And then it totally blew me away. The messages that I got, I mean, for weeks after was insane. Like, it was so much love and so much support. And then I came to realize I wasn't the only person who had felt this way. I wasn't the only person who had gone through it. I wasn't the only person struggling with that kind of situation at that exact moment. And that's when I realized, like, shit, the more that I can be like truly like open and honest with my students on anything and everything that's going on, like, the more it can help them. And it was even to the point where, I mean, because my engagement ended January, maybe like a month and a half ago, one of my artists messaged me and said, "Can I ask you a question?" I'm like, "Of course." She's like, "How did you know? And this is an artist that's been married for a minute." And she's like, "How did you know it was no longer right? How did you know you had to get out?" She's like, "I know you weren't married, but like, what were like the signs for you?" And I was like, the minute I read that, I was like, fuck, she's sitting in the place that I was sitting in before I went through the stack with Garrett. I was like, okay. So even inside of there, I went back into the network and I did a whole nother story on it. And I'm like, I keep getting this question, guys, here's the truth of everything. And I told like more detail than I ever had before, like nitty gritty shit that I even admitted. I'm like, me saying this probably makes me look like a piece of shit, makes me look like a terrible human, but it just is what it is. Like, I'm not gonna lie on the story now and try to make myself look better. Right. And I think that's like something a lot of people do. They're like, oh, I could tell it, but if I tell the story that's really like hard for me to talk about, I'm gonna adjust it so I don't look bad. Fuck it, like, tell the story, just tell all of it.
People are scared of looking bad only to realize they look like a big dumbass by not telling the whole story, because you can tell inauthenticity within people. And so when there's a piece of the puzzle missing and you're like, you played a role in this, you stupid douchebag, like own up to it. And I think that is really like an important piece to growth. You know what I mean?
Oh,
is being able.
It's accountability.
Yeah, it's accountability and being able to share your story, but not share your story in the sense of like, and that's why I'm so awesome. Like, it's more like, hey, I was a douchebag and I learned a lot from it, and my goal is to course correct and not continue to live in douchebag land, you know?
Oh, for sure. And that's why the second story I went in and told the students a couple months ago, I guess, it was like because, hindsight's always 20/20. You always gain like more insight and like retrospect when you go back and look at a story. But I sat there and I was like, ooh, this was a point where I knew something was wrong. This was a point. This is what I felt. This is what I saw. This is how I viewed this. And sitting here now 6 months out, I'm like, shit, there were tons of signs that it was not going to work, even like with how I felt on certain things, but I was not willing to like address it because emotions they're not my strongest suit. Me moving here, I think it was within like it had to be like a month that Garrett sent me to fucking Landmark.
I feel like I attracted a bunch of robots just so we could all we could all really explore this other side of us, because I know our topic's on power today, and because it's not our strong suit, creating this persona and this person who's like, we're creating who we really are supposed to be. And so it's funny, we probably literally I think that all of everyone that works with us, we kind of all have that, like, I don't know, like, we're just like, we grind, we do the work, we don't need to just tuck the emotions under the rug, like, kind of thing. And I think like we've all been able to really open up and get to like a whole nother level. You know what I mean? So.
Oh yeah. And I get told time and time again, oh my gosh, Sam Falsafis with Wake Up Warrior, we went on like a 2-some-hour walk and talk the other day. And even inside of that, he's like, you can't do that. Like, that's not great for you. I'm like, I know. Garrett says it. You say it. Like, I know. But as it turns out, as a human, I'm a work in progress, guys. Like, I'm working on this whole vulnerability, emotions things. And Garrett is really just pounding it into my head, because when I first moved here, he sent me to Landmark, which is like a 3-day. I had no fucking clue what he was sending me to. His exact words were, I want you to take this course. It'll make you a better trainer. I'm like, ooh, I'll be a better trainer. All right. And then I get there, 45 minutes in, I am crying, like bawling my eyes out, because he told me, he's like, they're going to ask for volunteers. I'm like, I'll volunteer. I'll get on any stage, anywhere. I don't care. That's a strong suit for me, motherfuckers. Like, doesn't bother me. You mean I have to get on stage in front of 150 people and talk to them about my feelings and why I don't like sharing my feelings with strangers? The minute I realized that, 45 minutes in, I started crying, and I text Garrett, and I'm like, you're the worst. I'm like, why would you do this to me? He's like, you got it. Boom. I'm like, fuck your boom. I don't want your damn boom. You keep it. Get me out of this class. I did it. It was not easy, and I feel like I did well-ish, but I got sent to another thing. Val and I went together, and a lot of the Warriors went after, and literally the entire staff.
What was the other thing?
Impact.
Oh, yeah.
How can you forget that? It was, I will never, like, I can't lie and be like, it was the best experience of my life. Like, it was some gnarly shit, but by the end, I was super glad I did it, because I feel like it did help me open up more and be like, okay, because I saw all these people talking about, I mean, some crazy stuff inside their lives. Like I would sit there at the end of the day and be like, shit, my life is amazing. Like, not that I'm trying to play the comparison game, but damn, you know, like I don't have to deal with like murdering people. Like that is crazy, you know? You laugh, but you also know it's kind of true. No, seriously, I just want to say in my landmark class, one of the guys, he was like, I'm in the military and I murdered a whole family. I knew they were innocent, but I had to do it. And I'm sitting there like, I don't like to talk about my feelings, so I feel like I should just keep my mouth shut on this one. This one's
he has me beat.
Yeah, not that I have feelings on what he said. I keep my mouth shut, but I'm like, oh shit, I don't think we're here for the same kind of reasons, man. So I'm gonna just sit and be an observer. But now I view that like being more open and honest with my students, like the more they see that, like it's crazy that even I had a girl come up to me at BMS Con too, and she was like, this was literally the middle of class. I don't even know what was going on at the time, but I was sitting in the back eating a Pop-Tart. Sorry, I was sneaking. I was very hungry. And she came up. She's like, hey, I wanted to catch you. I'm like, yeah. She's like, I just wanted to tell you, like, I know that you have such a reputation of being, like, such a tough bitch. She's like, I just don't see it. I'm like, oh. She's like, I just see you as, like, so soft and so gentle and so caring. She's like, thank you for sharing, like, this with us. And I was like, oh, my God. That was, I'll be honest, the first time that's ever happened in my life. Like, I've never been called soft, like warm and fuzzy up until that moment. And I was like, shit, I feel like those are the things that always like come back to me and remind me like being vulnerable is not easy. Like, it's not easy for some people are like fucking criers. And I'm like, Jesus, okay, like maybe can you reel it in a little bit? But
well, that's the thing for me. Like when I would see people be vulnerable, it's a fine line between being vulnerable and you finding clarity and like releasing that so that you can move forward and have accountability and recognizing things in your life that are or are not working and changing from there. And same thing with being vulnerable where you're like not feeling alone and you can like inspire others as well and sharing it and growth happens. To me, that's vulnerability. It's a slippery slope when sometimes people are so vulnerable, so open, so all about me.
And you're like, reel it in.
And that's why I'm so hesitant to be that way is because I never want the spotlight. I never want it to be all about me. So that's why so many times I'm like quiet and I'm like, oh, I don't want to say anything because like I don't want to like. But you see people do it and they're like so open and so over the top and I'm like, but why are you talking so much about yourself?
But you know what? Here's the difference though. Something that I've seen in all three of us, we've never sat and had a woe is me moment. Like, oh my God, my life is terrible. The situation is terrible. Life is hard. Anytime we've ever gone through and had like a moment of vulnerability and talked about like our story, our feelings, like where we're at in life at that time, it's always been wrapped around to be like, okay, but what's the positive in this? What can I do to change this? Because there are some students and there's one particular in mind. I won't say her name, but I'm like, holy shit show. Like everything was a complaint. Like, and it was past the point of being like, hey, I'm having a hard time. Like, this isn't great. It's literally like constant complaining day in and day out. And I'm like, okay, but that doesn't serve you anymore. Like, how do you not see that? Yes, get it out. I am the number one, like, I don't even know the word I'm looking for.
So I guess there's people in the opposite case of us who like they tend to be, I don't want to say whiners, but you know what I mean, where you're like, oh my God, like enough with the drama. And it's like that's when you're like, that's not serving you either. Like vulnerability can be a strength, but obviously in your case it might need to be reeled in a little bit because you're stuck in this story of like a victim mentality versus like, hey, this is what happened, this sucked, I'm gonna move over here. You're stuck in this victim mentality of like, and then it compiles on it just keeps going. You'll be like, when am I gonna catch a break? When you fucking choose to catch a break. Like your life sucks because you're like, oh, another thing and another thing and another thing. And I will say I even experienced a point in my life where I was like that and I was like, can I get a fucking break? And then I remember like hitting that point and I was like, God damn it, it's you. So stop acting like a whiny little bitch and figure out how to make things work. And it takes that place of pain for me, even when I was like, life's just really compiling on me and da-da-da-da-da, where I was just like, no, take back the reins and change it, you know? And so it's like a balance, like you were saying, where people can get in this place of vulnerability can be a strength, but it also can be entitlement. So keep yourself in check. Like if you're the ice princess like us, it's important to share your story and
don't tell Garrett that. I'm gonna get sent to another conference.
And value your strength. You know what I mean? Like value your strength, but also be able to release a little bit of like, hey, I'm not a robot. I do care. Here is my story to help others grow. And then if you're that person that's constantly like, poor me, poor me, poor for me, that's not going to serve you either. So it's, again, just like finding the balance where it can be a strength and not a weakness. And I always tell people, I'm like, I believe like our weaknesses are our strengths and our strengths are our weaknesses, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? You just have to like keep them in check. And so I just think it is what it is. And like a perfect example of that is like, I'm a perfectionist in so many areas where I kind of come across like a bitch, you know, and maybe I always thought of that as like a curse, like, oh, I can't say this, I can't do this, but it's too critical, I'm being too critical. And then I realized, like, what if I flip it and I can look at this like perfectionist part of me and I put it to where it serves me, and it's a blessing and it's not a curse.
Mm-hmm.
And we can look at vulnerability, and we can look at other areas in our life where if we can just figure out how to reframe that, it can actually serve us. And every little blessing and every little gift that we have can actually be used to serve us if we can figure out how to do so and keep ourselves in check.
Well, definitely. And we've seen that, like, we see that inside NBR all the time. Obviously, like, you have to have a critical eye. And Val, like, you do it too. Like, you'll look at your pictures. We'll look at it and be like, God, it's beautiful. And you're like, but there's that one hair. Do you see it underneath those other 300?
I still get so much freaking, like, anxiety. I have that same, like, critical eye. And I'm like, oh, I don't do it. Like, don't post the picture. It's so funny.
And it can hold you back.
Yeah. But I try to look at it, like, then that's how it's helped me learn so much, is that, like, I'm just, like, constantly, like, so detail-oriented on that I'm like, oh, this is what I could fix. This is what I could do better.
Right.
And I think that's why even us three as a team work so well, because you guys are super, like, it's the art. Like, it's always the art. You're, I think, a little bit of both, but I don't think you like my kind of details.
I'm like the tweener. Like, you are technical and and Val's super artsy, and I feel like I'm like somewhere mushed in between.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because I know with me, like, the systems and like strategies that like I'm super, super technical. Like, I love that. Like, if you were to see the boards in my office right now, you'd like,
oh my God, I came back from vacation. I was at the office this morning, like, doing work, and I was like looking at the boards, and it's everything that I know, but like how I picture things in my head, things are like floating around. Like, if you saw the visual of what happens in my head, and then I see these like linear boards of like every last detail, and I was like, holy shit, we do a lot of work. But in me, it's just like floating, and I'm like, oh yeah, let me grab this tab, and I'm gonna work on this, and then I'm gonna grab this. But Ani's is like so meticulous, like everything laid out, and I'm like, dang, it's so crazy how different our brains are.
Well, and that's why even like when we were talking about like the intensives and changing it up, and Danielle's like, we should do color. Like, I immediately go into like a system. I'm like, okay, well, but if we do color, then it has to be this, because this is not going to work. This is this, da-da-da.
I'm like, no, color here, color there.
I know, and I was like, after like, because we were sending those messages.
Are we going over smudging and toning?
Right.
You know I love that shit.
Literally, like, as we were sending the messages back and forth, I was just laughing so hard because I'm sitting there and I'm like, shit, I know she's just like, you know what, it'd be really good to go over this. And I'm like, okay, well, if we do it, this is not going to work. This would work great, but this is just like, my mind starts going into like plan mode of making it like, what can we make a system that we can replicate time and time again, every single time, like, not the same results, but like the outcome will be like, we know what it is.
Right.
And I'm sure you were like, fucking shit, Ani, like, leave it be. I just said color. I don't know. Like, I was like laughing so hard though.
I just think, my brain likes structure, but I'm also like very artistic. So I'm just like, if it's too structured, it actually gives me anxiety.
Same.
And I have to let
That's why I don't tell you guys and things
I'll be
anymore.
Like, oh, like if Ani sends me a text that's more than like 3 sentences, I'm like, I can't even open it.
Joke's on you. I just send him one text at a time now. You got 500 sentences, but it was just 500 separate messages.
Oh, yes. Oh, perfect.
Oh my gosh. So, I mean, we have about like 8 and 10 minutes left, but even coming back to vulnerability, and I think it's so funny because I know even with myself, when it comes to that, I almost like, there are some days, like you and I had like not a hard talk the other day, but like we had a talk the other day where I was just like super quiet. I'm like, I hear you. Like, yes, like I get it. And
I was thinking you were going to break because I was on that point of breaking because just like well, I was on my period, I'm not gonna lie, but
you're like, that might explain some but
even though like I wanted to call you, and then I felt like you didn't break, which then I was like, okay, I'm gonna be strong, I can't be the only one that's like not. And so I still am like, but I knew you were in process mode. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
And I was kind of like, okay, I'm not gonna like push her to break. I can tell she's in process mode. So I'm just like, I wanted to like share my feelings on a few things, and I was like, here's where, because it was bogging me down. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, I just gotta approach you and talk to you. But I just was like, you're in process mode, and everybody processes things like differently. You know what I mean? So I was like, I'm not gonna push it there, but.
Oh yeah, and I know with me, like, break point, I mean, I've had those since I've been here for sure, but I feel like they're generally like very quiet, silent, no one knows about it, and I'm like, okay, you pick yourself back up, you put on a fucking happy face, and you just keep going. Like, sometimes
you have to do. Like,
Yeah.
as a mom, I mean, you don't have kids, but don't you feel like as a mom, you're like, I can't be a basket case all day. Like,
No.
shit's got to get done. Like, we've been time as a mom. Like, you have the flu. Guess what? You're still the fucking mom. Like, you.
No time off. No days
time off. I was gonna say you man up, but you woman up. And,
Right?
and it is what it is. And so sometimes I think that's a strength that women carry, is that we have this genetic build to be like, nope. It's like perseverance, and we are like, nope. You tuck that shit under the rug, because shit, like we got to get this done. And so I think that is a strength too, and not to say that. So it's like, for you being like, oh, I have to be in touch with my vulnerable side. Yes, but how you operate in the sense that you can like literally be like, this has got to get done, and you're very strong there. That's a strength for you as well. And so it's like, I don't want you to like beat yourself up about, and we're talking about vulnerability, I don't want you to be like, oh, I need to be more vulnerable. Like, you do.
You should tell Garrett that.
No, but
There's a time and place for it.
Yeah.
For being vulnerable.
Right.
And it's when it's benefiting your growth and it's benefiting other people, but you don't have to be like a vulnerable, like, puddle all the time.
And when you're,
I think you don't give yourself enough credit of like how you keep saying that you're not vulnerable, but like you've done so much work over these past like few months, and you have really opened up. I think that you're very open and you're very like vocal and like vulnerable about it.
And think about too, because I know you manage it. How many people do we have in the network?
265.
Right now? Like, I know you guys both manage a lot, but I just think like somebody's got to be like you can be vulnerable, but you can't be like constantly be like, oh yeah, that does suck. Let's go have a cry party over here. Like, you have to be that. Somebody's got to be that person that's like, okay, and you have to be able to flip your mindset where it's like logically assess things and be like, okay, well, let's look at this and this and this, and like assess the situation and move on.
That's why, like, I'm great. I am super good with hearing other people's vulnerabilities, like their problems, like the shit's going on inside of their life. Like, I am fucking solid with that, because I can shut myself down, which, okay, that doesn't sound great, and Garrett keeps telling me not to, but like I can shut it down to be like, okay, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I can I feel you. I can feel the pain that you're in, but I know, like, I have learned, like, just from being here, how to completely shut it down and be like, don't take it home with me anymore. Like, I can't do that to myself. Like, I need space to like be just me. Right. But even on top of that, like, I'm telling you, like, Danielle, if you knew some of the stuff the students said to me, like, there are some days where I've called Val and been like, dude, like, this was a gnarly one, and I can't sit there and be like, oh my God, like, you're right. Like, I can be like, oh my God, you poor baby, because then it's like, even like that doesn't help them. It just keeps them in like the pity party mode. And I'm like, no, like, someone needs to be here, not to give you a swift kick in the ass. Like, I'm a helping hand more than I feel like I'm a kick in when it comes to business.
You're an accountability coach, you know, in a way, and you give people permission, and that's like the same that we all do that, but like somebody's got to be more the enforcer. And I would say out of us three, that's you. Like, you are the mom I always wish I had.
Thank you, honey.
But I'm a fun mom.
These are my moms. I've got fun mom and structured mom together. It's really good. I don't know where I fit in the mix, but
one grounds you and the other is like, but here's a piece of pizza. Call your friends later. Don't worry about it. Don't tell mom too.
What's funny is I'm like super structured, but I can easily be nudged over the edge. Like, if we're out drinking or whatever and somebody's like, one more, I'm like, absolutely one more. So I'm not usually like the pusher.
The fact that you were dragging me across your patio on a towel 4th of July, I would agree with you.
Okay, I became the pusher then, but it's because I got nudged over the ledge.
Judgy asshole! Judgy asshole!
Oh, did you hear about that?
I heard about it when I was watching the hot seats from last week.
Let's just
and
say,
you were saying the story. I was
on the 4th
laughing.
of July, I'll just fill you in. Like I said, I get nudged over the edge early, and I had to work the next day, and I was like, I'm just gonna drink a little bit during the day, and it turned into more. And then I would look at some of the moms, because we had a big party, sipping on their rosé as I was taking shots of Jameson, and I said, you're being a judgy asshole, and you're gonna take a shot with me right now.
I would like it to be known, literally, no one even looked at her sideways. I don't know where she got this idea from.
I was judging myself, and I was like, as I was taking a shot, I'm like, you're such an asshole. It's so good. And then I made everyone else drink with me.
Yeah, it literally started into a chant of judgy asshole. Yeah,
it wasn't my finest moment as a mom, you guys. I'm just gonna say, but it was fun. So,
but as Susan, it was one of Susan's greatest moments. Don't you worry. I don't know if everyone has a drunk name for themselves. I feel like I don't think I'm the only one that doesn't. I think because Val's Nicole.
I don't know who named me Susan.
Stacy.
Oh, that dick.
Stacy named you Susan, but
Anyway.
no, even like I said, because we're coming down to the wire, but I think that's something so great, even about like all of us, like we've all learned to really not manage each other, but be like, okay, like it's like conversations aren't always the easiest, but to be able to be like, hey, deep breath, just so you know, when you do this, it triggers me, or hey, when you said this the other day, kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like I think that's the only way the team grows and stays like together, is being able to be like, hey, here's where I'm at, here's where you're at, here's where this happened. Can we talk about it? Great, cool. Let's move forward. But you're right. It's never pity party with any of us.
Well, and you know what? I feel like I should touch base on this really quick, because we did a hot seat with one of the girls, and it was like her and her assistant, how they went into a shit show.
Oh yeah.
And what I was realizing is, and I know there's always two sides to this story, but and we always tell people, like, if you're gonna hire an assistant or people that we work with, like we very much like, we feel like family, like we have a great bond, and like we kind of like approach assistants or people we're hiring as like not just an employee but family. And so what happens, and I just want to touch base on this, is like if you get too chummy and you can't say, and you're just all about fun and like I love you, like da da da, and then you don't collide, and you don't say, hey, this is not going to work, then you lose that respect for one another, and then it's no longer a good business relationship as well.
Agreed.
And so, and I think I don't know their story, but I would guess that that's what happened, is she was too nice, and then like things started to slide, but somebody is like getting pint up, like like I want to be friends with you, but like I'm not okay with you doing this in business, but we're friends, so I can't say anything. And I bet that happens a lot in our industry, because it's fun and it's a fun environment to work in. It could happen in a lot of industries, but if you get too much in the friend zone, and to me, like, you're not going to be productive. And to me, like, if you actually care about somebody, like, even though it was uncomfortable for me to call you and be like, hey, this is bugging me, because I love you guys and I want you on the team, I'm like, I have to confront somebody because I actually care that we like handle shit and like move past this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's why it took me like a whole day to process. And the next day I was like, okay, I had time to think, like, here's where I'm at. Like, I'm sorry it took me this long, but like, yeah, like I hear you on this. Here's where I'm at with this. I didn't know that this, you know, like, and I feel like, yeah, it was just like a few texts we sent back and forth. But even after that, I'm like, I don't know how you felt, but I was like, oh, okay, I feel better about this.
I felt better.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, now I feel like, and now I even know, like, even stupid things. When I was texting you the other day, I was like, send Danielle an emoji. I'm like, is that coming off too stern? I'm like, it's not meant to be. That's why when you're like, no, Garrett says it's fine. And I was like, I'm not trying to be anything. There was an emoji. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, even those things make me laugh now, but now I'm trying to be more aware, like, okay, how I talk to Garrett doesn't work for Danielle.
But how many problems can be avoided in general, like in this specific relationship inside of our network, where she hired her and they're friends and all this, but if she said, like, hey, if communication goes on both sides, you know, from like the assistant and the stylist, and it was like if they both had better communication, they could have that friend relationship as well as that business relationship. But things, and I bet this goes in life, in marriage too, but things have gotten
with everything,
and things get so comfortable that all of a sudden it's just like, well, fuck you, and it was just like the straw that broke the camel's back, literally. And then you can't, it's too hard to repair like so many like years or months or whatever it is of bad patterns and behaviors. And so then it's like, what took you maybe like 6 months to create might take you a year to create better, what am I trying to say? Better, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Better relationships.
But I feel like it's almost like, imagine you have a bowl. Like if there's a chip in the bowl, if you just address it when it's a little chip, if you don't let it come into a bigger crack and then a bigger crack to the point where you actually pour soup in it, now that shit's like spilling out the side, like don't let it get bigger and bigger and worse.
I was thinking like actual chips. I was like, what's happening to the chips? The sauce on its way.
God damn it, Val. No, the bowl itself has a chip in it. There's a chip in the porcelain. Okay. Damn it. So yeah, but that's like maybe the best way I can put it. Like, don't wait until that chip becomes a crack and then a bigger crack and then spirals into more, because there comes a point where you literally can't fix it, where it is so irreparable, like you fucking toss it and then the business goes down or the friendship goes down, like shit will go sideways. You can't keep your soup in the bowl anymore, guys.
I can say that I experienced that in being married. Like, I had a massive gaping channel through my bowl, and it took me like what took probably like 3-4 years of like shitty behavior on both sides, all of a sudden took us like 5-6 years to repair. And we would put a little piece back in the bowl and fix the chip, and then we'd say something rude to one another or something, and then the chip would come out, and it was so hard to repair that. And so people even ask me and Garrett like how we fixed like our life and our marriage and that, and I'm like, we just like committed to make it work and slowly kept filling back in the hole until it felt like the bowl was whole.
The bowl was whole. And on that note, unfortunately, we have reached the end of our podcast. I'm like, these can't go on for 10 days, you mean? So, but no, thanks for joining us again for episode number.
Is that really how we're ending it? Can we have some final thoughts from Val?
Val, you're the deep one here. What you got?
Oh, I'm the deep one. I just was upset we weren't talking about chips and salsa.
So thanks for joining us for the
But yeah,
guac and
I
chips
think
and dip.
you need to be vulnerable and you need to be open and do it so that it's serving you in a way that you're growing, not in a pity party. So if you need to be open with employees, open communication with your clients, open to people in your life, and show vulnerability when it's helping you grow or helping others grow, but no pity parties.
Love it.
There we go. Thank you. That's better than
I wrapped
hole
it
in a
back
bowl.
around. Now let's go get chips and salsa, ladies.
Yeah, but so on that note, here's what I encourage you to do is actually go through and maybe look at your life. Like, have you been having a pity party for yourself on something? Or even inside of that, have you been avoiding conversation that would require you to be vulnerable in some way, shape, or form, and it's just maybe uncomfortable and weird and you haven't done it? And I encourage you to go have those conversations. And it doesn't have to be a huge collision and a big shit show, but just an honest conversation. And on that note, thank you for joining us for episode number 30 of
Dirty 30.
Dirty 30 of the Big Money Stylist podcast, and we will see you guys next week.